They say America has seen political chaos before, but nothing, prepared the nation for the moment Gavin Newsom leaned into the podium, stared straight into the cameras, and uttered the single word that detonated everything. Piggy. It was live television. Prime time. 90 million viewers across every major network. And yet the silence that followed hit harder than any explosion. You could feel it. An electrical pause that crackled through living rooms, bars, airports, anywhere a screen was glowing. Reporters froze mid-sentence. Staffers behind the governor went pale. Even the stage lights seemed to flicker, unsure whether they were witnessing a political speech, or the birth of a national scandal. And then, like a fuse hissing toward dynamite, Newsom continued. When a leader treats the American people like piggy banks he can break open whenever he wants, he said, voice tight, unshakably calm, you don't have a president. You have a piggy president. That was the moment the air snapped. In Mar-a-Lago, Trump was reportedly watching the broadcast with donors. Aides later claimed he stood up so fast his chair slammed against the marble floor. Social media ignited instantly. TikTok was flooded with clips before Newsom finished his next sentence. #PiggyPresident skyrocketed to the top of Twitter in under 3 minutes. Cable networks cut away from commercials mid-roll just to replay the moment. But nothing, and no one, was prepared for Trump's response. Because while the country was still gasping, still processing what they heard, Trump took the stage at his Texas rally and delivered a comeback so explosive, so brutally unfiltered, that within hours it became the most discussed, dissected, replayed moment in modern political history. Before that night was over, one thing was unmistakably clear. This wasn't just another insult. This was the spark of a political wildfire. And America was already burning. Trump hadn't even made it halfway up the steps to the rally stage when an aide sprinted toward him, face drained white. "Sir, Newsom just called you." "I heard it," Trump snapped, brushing past him. "Turn the mic on." The crowd inside the Dallas arena was already restless, buzzing with pieces of the breaking news. A ripple of confusion broke into a wave of rage as giant screens overhead flashed the headline. "Newsom, Trump is America's piggy president." Booing thundered through the hall. Flags shook. Phones shot up like a forest of antennas hungry for the next shockwave. The atmosphere felt thick, humid with adrenaline, fear, loyalty, fury. Trump reached the podium, gripping the side so hard his knuckles whitened. For a moment, he didn't speak. He just stared at the camera, calm, cold, calculating. The type of calm that makes even supporters swallow hard. Then, without breaking eye contact, he leaned forward. "Gavin Newsom," he said slowly, "has finally shown America what he really is." The arena fell still, waiting. A man who squeals louder than the pig he's trying to insult. The crowd exploded, roars, stomps, cheers. People jumped out of their seats. The sound felt physical, pounding through the walls, vibrating in the chest. Trump lifted a single finger, signaling for silence, and the room obeyed as if pulled by a wire. "And let me tell you something," Trump continued, voice rising now, words sharpened like blades. "When a weak governor runs out of ideas, what does he do? He squeals. He blames. He points. He paused. And when he's really scared." Another pause, longer this time. "He oinks." The arena erupted again, this time louder, almost animalistic. But the cameras captured something the crowd didn't see. Trump's eyes. Not amused. Not proud. Threatened. It was the look of a man who understood that Newsom's jab didn't just hit him. It hit something deeper, his image, his ego, his control. And America felt the shift. This wasn't a feud. This was the beginning of a political knife fight within minutes. Every major network cut into programming with the same breaking banner: "The piggy crisis explodes." News anchors spoke fast, almost tripping over their words as fresh clips poured in from both events. One screen showed Newsom's poised, razor-sharp delivery, the other replayed Trump's rally eruption on loop, each oink echoing louder with every cycle. In newsrooms across New York and D.C., producers barked orders. Phones rang non-stop. Editors demanded instant subtitles, expert panels, reaction grids. The story wasn't just trending, it was mutating, growing teeth. TikTok flooded with side-by-side edits, some mocking, some furious, all viral. At CNN, a political analyst whispered, "This isn't policy anymore. This is identity warfare." At Fox, a commentator smirked, calling Newsom's jab the most California insult imaginable. MSNBC brought on a behavioral psychologist who claimed Trump's reaction showed a rare moment of visible insecurity. Meanwhile, in Sacramento, Newsom's team watched the coverage tighten around them like a storm wall. Staffers exchanged uneasy glances. One muttered, "He didn't expect it to blow up this fast." Another responded, "No one did." But the real tremor came when a hot mic from Trump's rally leaked online. In the clip, he muttered to an aide, "He wants a fight? I'll give him one he can't crawl out of." That sentence detonated across the internet harder than the original insult. Commentators seized it. Critics warned it sounded like a threat. Supporters claimed it was strength. Neutral voters just stared, overwhelmed. By sundown, the narrative was no longer about who insulted whom. It was about which man had just crossed a line, and what the other would do next. America didn't know it yet, but the crisis had only started. By midnight, 2 war rooms on opposite coasts were glowing like emergency beacons. In Sacramento, Newsom's advisors crowded around a long oak table, laptops open, polls updating every few seconds. The numbers were wild, support surging in some states, collapsing in others. One strategist whispered, "We poked the beehive, now we see what flies out." Newsom stood at the window, arms crossed, watching the Capitol dome shimmer in the dark. He looked calm, but his jaw betrayed tension. He finally spoke, "If we backtrack now, he wins the narrative." His communications director nodded but warned, "If we escalate, we risk becoming the story instead of leading it." Across the country at Mar-a-Lago, Trump's inner circle was in near chaos. Advisors argued about the next move, counterattack, ignore, or reframe. A senior aide insisted, "Call him weak. Call him desperate." Another pushed, "Lean into humor. Own the insult." But Trump wasn't listening. He replayed Newsom's clip again and again, volume high, eyes narrowed. "He thinks he's clever," Trump muttered. "He thinks he can brand me." An aide cautiously replied, "Sir, the internet already picked sides. We need a message before morning." Trump turned slowly, that familiar storm gathering in his expression. "I'll give them a message," he said. "Something they'll talk about for weeks." Silence fell. Everyone sensed the shift, a decision forming, something sharp, explosive. Both teams braced for impact, knowing the next 24 hours could define not just a headline, but the entire election season. And somewhere between those 2 war rooms, the country held its breath, waiting for the next blow in a fight neither man could afford to lose. By sunrise, America felt different. News feeds buzzed like a live wire, every platform drowning in the same question: what will Trump say next? Cable networks played the piggy clip side by side with Trump's rally eruption, looping them like a national heartbeat. Even morning commuters, half asleep in coffee lines, whispered about it as if discussing an approaching storm. At 7:12 a.m., the first tremor hit. Trump posted a single sentence on Truth Social. "If Newsom wants a barnyard fight, he'll get one." The message exploded instantly. Supporters treated it like a battle cry. Critics called it unhinged. Late-night hosts scrambled to rewrite monologues. Hashtags multiplied, hashtag piggy crisis, hashtag barnyard battle, #OinkGate, each more chaotic than the last. Newsom's team huddled in a cramped briefing room, watching reactions spike by the second. A young aide exhaled shakily. "He's steering this into absurdity," she said. The communications director shook his head. "Absurdity is dangerous. Especially when he controls the frame." Meanwhile, Trump stepped onto the driveway outside Mar-a-Lago for an impromptu press moment. Cameras swarmed instantly. He raised his hands theatrically. "Gavin made a big mistake," he said. "A huge mistake. You call someone piggy? That's childish. Sad. And honestly, kind of weird." Reporters pressed forward with questions, but Trump wasn't done. "He wants to talk about piggy banks," he added. "Let's talk about his spending. Let's talk about the disaster in California. If anyone's squealing, it's him." Within seconds, clips of the exchange went viral. Not because of the words, but because of Trump's tone. Calm. Controlled. Almost playful. A sharp contrast to the fury of the night before. Americans watching at home sensed something unnerving. This wasn't Trump losing control. This was Trump strategizing. And the nation braced itself for whatever was coming next. By late afternoon, Trump's playful press moment had already shifted public mood, but no one expected what came next. At a private luncheon with donors in Palm Beach, a hot mic captured the sentence that would ignite the biggest uproar of the entire piggy crisis. Trump leaned in, unaware his table mic was still live. "They call me piggy? Fine. Let's call Newsom what he is, America's spoiled little princess." Laughter erupted inside the room. But outside? A journalist monitoring the feed froze. The audio clipped, uploaded, and detonated online within minutes. The reaction was instant and ferocious. Some viewers gasped at the mockery. Others cheered at the punchback. But the dominant reaction, the one that surged across TikTok, Instagram, and every major news banner, was shock. Because the line didn't just insult Newsom. It triggered a deeper political nerve: masculinity, power, ego, and humiliation on a national stage. Newsom's team watched the clip in stunned silence. One aide ran a hand over his face. He didn't just escalate, he gender-flipped him. The communications director whispered, "This is psychological warfare now." Meanwhile, in living rooms across the country, voters replayed the audio over and over. The tone was unmistakable, sharp, mocking, intentional. Not the measured Trump from that morning. This was a man hitting back with precision. At CNN, a panelist muttered on live TV, "That wasn't a gaffe. That was a warning shot." At Fox, commentators grinned. "This is why people love him," one said. "He doesn't hold back." But somewhere in California, Newsom watched the clip alone, shoulders squared, jaw locked. He knew exactly what this meant. If he didn't respond strategically, he'd lose control of the entire narrative. The crisis had evolved. This wasn't just a clash of insults anymore. It was a full-scale identity war, broadcast to the entire nation. That evening, just as pundits were still dissecting Trump's hot mic moment, Newsom stepped into a minimalist studio inside the California Capitol. No cheering crowd, no dramatic backdrop, just a single camera, soft lighting, and the governor standing centered like a man preparing for trial. His team knew this response had to be surgical. No jokes. No theatrics. Just precision. The red light blinked on. "Today," Newsom began, voice steady, "the former president called me a princess. Cute. But name-calling doesn't change the reality Americans are living." He paused, letting the silence breathe. Families can't afford groceries. Seniors can't afford medicine. Our democracy is cracking. And his focus, is a nickname? The clip already felt different, measured, deliberate, almost presidential. Online viewers described it as the calm before an unseen storm. Newsom leaned slightly closer to the lens. "You want to talk about piggy banks?" he continued. "Let's talk about who broke them. Let's talk about trillion-dollar tax cuts for donors. Let's talk about who raided the nation's savings while Americans struggled." His tone hardened, not loud, but sharp. "Trump wants a barnyard fight? I want a conversation about responsibility. About leadership. About honesty." Across social media, the response was immediate. Millions reposted the clip with captions like, "He flipped the script." Even some conservative commentators admitted the tone was unexpectedly controlled. Cable news interrupted coverage to air the full statement. But the moment that truly went viral came at the end. Newsom folded his hands, gaze unwavering. "You can call me princess. You can call me anything you want," he said. "But don't you dare insult the American people by pretending insults our leadership." Boom. Within minutes, the internet lit up. Hashtags like #PrincessSpeech and #PiggyCrisis exploded again, only now the momentum had shifted. The narrative was no longer about who threw the first punch, but about who looked like the adult in the room. And Trump, watching from Florida, felt that shift like a blow to the ribs. By the next morning, America woke up to a political earthquake. Overnight polling from 3 major networks dropped simultaneously, and every chart told the same shocking story: undecided voters, normally frozen until late election season, had shifted. Not by miles, but by inches. And inches decide elections. In the Sacramento war room, aides hovered over screens, eyes widening as the numbers refreshed. One analyst whispered, "He actually gained, after calling Trump out?" Another replied, "Not gained. Stabilized. That's the real surprise." Across the country in Florida, Trump's team stared at their own polling with growing agitation. Supporters still backed him fiercely, but swing voters? They were rattled by the hot mic leak. One advisor muttered, "They love when he punches up. But this time, they're not sure who he hit." The air felt different. Heavy. Expectant. Cable news panels scrambled for explanations. MSNBC framed the shift as response to maturity. Fox argued it was temporary noise. CNN simply called it the piggy crisis effect. TikTok commentators joked, "America loves drama, but not that kind of drama." But the most telling sign came from the public itself. At diners, gas stations, parks, and subways, strangers found themselves in quiet conversation, not about policy, but about tone. About dignity. About what leadership should feel like in a country already stretched thin. "He shouldn't have said princess," one voter told a reporter, shaking her head. "He shouldn't have called him piggy either," another added. It wasn't outrage that filled the nation. It was fatigue. A collective sigh that said, "Enough." And yet, beneath that exhaustion, something else stirred: uncertainty. Because everyone knew Trump never let a narrative slip without yanking it back in his direction. Which is why, just after 3 p.m., when reporters noticed a sudden, unannounced blockage forming outside Mar-a-Lago, the country held its breath. Something was happening. And whatever Trump was preparing, it wouldn't be quiet. By late afternoon, the press blockade outside Mar-a-Lago had swollen into a frenzy. Reporters stood shoulder to shoulder behind metal barricades, whispering theories as Secret Service agents repositioned themselves with unusual urgency. No schedule had been released. No podium had been set. But something in the air crackled, like static before lightning. At 3:47 p.m., the doors swung open. Trump emerged. No rally lights. No cheering crowd. No booming soundtrack. Just him, a lone figure stepping into the blinding Florida sun, jaw locked, eyes narrowed with the unmistakable intensity of a man refusing to lose control of a narrative. Cameras clicked like gunfire. He approached the microphone slowly, deliberately. "I've been watching," he began, voice low, calmer than anyone expected. "I've seen the polls. I've seen the clips. I've seen the little speeches." A faint smirk crossed his lips. Cute. Journalists exchanged quick glances. This wasn't anger. This was strategy. "But let me tell you something America needs to hear," Trump continued. "Gavin Newsom didn't call me piggy because he's brave. He did it because he's scared. Scared of his record. Scared of his failures. Scared that the minute we talk facts instead of fairy tales, his campaign collapses." He leaned closer to the mic. "So if he wants insults? I don't need them. I don't need names. I don't need barnyard games. Because I have something stronger. A beat. Reality." The crowd of reporters tightened, sensing a shift. Trump straightened his shoulders. "You can call me whatever you want," he said. "But the American people know who's fighting for them. And they know who's performing for cameras like a Hollywood extra." Gasps rippled through the press line. He wasn't snapping back this time. He was reframing the entire crisis, with a single, controlled message. Then he stepped back, offering only 2 final words before walking away. "Watch tomorrow." The nation froze. Because Trump never said, "Watch tomorrow," unless he was about to set the country on fire. The next morning, America woke to a countdown it didn't ask for. Every major network plastered the same lower third across the screen: "Trump to make unannounced statement, 12 p.m. Eastern Time." Commentators speculated wildly. Was it retaliation? A policy drop? A campaign reset? Even Wall Street opened jittery, watching for tremors. At 11:59, millions tuned in. The camera cut to a podium draped in navy cloth. Trump approached with the stern resolve of a man who'd rehearsed every step. He didn't shout. He didn't smirk. He didn't even mention the word piggy. Instead, he inhaled slowly and began. "America has reached a point where insults make bigger headlines than ideas. I'm done playing that game." A quiet shock spread across the nation. Trump, stepping above the fight? He continued. "If Governor Newsom wants a debate, I'll give him one. Not a showdown. A debate. 1 hour. No audience. No moderators. Just 2 men and the truth." Newsrooms erupted into chaos. Producers yelled for graphics. Analysts tripped over sentences. This wasn't escalation, it was a trap wrapped in diplomacy. "And Gavin," Trump added, eyes narrowing just slightly, "you don't get to hide behind speeches or studio lights. If you think you can call names and walk away, show America you can face the man you're talking about." The challenge detonated instantly. Newsom's team watched in stunned silence. An aide whispered, "He flipped it. He just flipped the whole thing." The governor exhaled, slow, steady, knowing he had no choice but to respond. Within minutes, he posted a single line. "Name the time." The internet melted. 2 men, 1 insult, 1 nation spiraling into a political firestorm, now heading toward a televised confrontation that promised to break every record and redefine the election. The piggy crisis had started as a joke. But it ended as the moment America realized. This wasn't about a nickname. This was about power, and who truly controlled the national narrative. Thank you for watching. The piggy crisis isn't just another political feud, it's a reminder of how quickly a single moment can ignite a national conversation. If you want more breakdowns of the stories the media tries to spin, twist, or bury, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. Your voice matters here. Drop your thoughts below and let's talk about what really happened.